After the Smiths broke up, Morrissey's solo career took over the spotlight. Now the band's legendary guitarist is finally stepping out of the shadows. My review of Call the Comet by Johnny Marr is coming up next on Track by Track. Hey everybody, my name's Kyle and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Thanks for tuning in today, and if this is your first time here, please take a second to click subscribe so that you won't miss future reviews and more. When Johnny Marr released his first solo album in 2013, my first response after listening to it was, what took him so long? The Messenger came almost 30 years after Marr's breakout as the soon-to-be legendary guitarist for the iconic alt-rock band The Smiths. As massive and lasting an impact as that band may have had, it's hard to believe they were only together for about 6 years. And while lead singer Morrissey launched a successful solo career pretty quickly after the breakup of the Smiths, Johnny Marr's new path ended up being one of mainly collaboration. For the most part, he's avoided being in the spotlight, instead contributing his signature guitar sound to bands like Modest Mouse, The, and Electronic, as well as making guest appearances on tracks by Pearl Jam, Oasis, Talking Heads, Beck, and even Pet Shop Boys. In 2003, Marr took his first shot at fronting his own group with the release of Boomslang with his band Johnny Marr and the Healers. That album failed to make much of an impact though, and shortly after, Marr ended up suspending the group and joining Modest Mouse. Perhaps it was a case of bad timing, or maybe he just needed to fully embrace his capability to be a true solo artist, but whatever the case may be, The Messenger was an outstanding and long overdue debut. I was also impressed by his sophomore album Playland a year later, not to mention his 2015 live album. Now Johnny Marr is back with his third solo album, Call the Comet. Very quickly into this new 12-song cycle, it becomes clear that Marr is building on the template that worked so well for him on his first two albums. I went back and I listened to those albums to get warmed up for this new release, and I was pleased by how much I still enjoyed them, by how they still validated my opinion that this guy deserves to be in the spotlight all by himself. And I feel just as strongly after hearing his new music. And while Johnny Marr is first and foremost one of rock's greatest guitar slingers, I have to say that his vocals on Call the Comet are the most confident and self-assured that I think I've heard from him. If his singing held traces of doubt just beneath the surface on The Messenger and Playland, that's all but vanished here. No one would claim that Marr has one of the strongest voices in rock, but he deserves credit for fully embracing his first instrument and delivering a vocal performance that easily holds its own alongside the guitar virtuosity that he's better known for, so bravo for that. Musically, Call the Comet is mostly on point as well. As I said, this is Johnny Marr doing what he does best, and we get that right from the opening track. You've heard me take issue with some artists' choices for opening songs before, but Marr really nails it here. Rise is the perfect way to kick things off with its cool, skittering guitar sound that leads into deep, crunching chords and contrasting guitar stings. I compare the sound to Arcade Fire, but that might feel like a put-down, so let's just say this is the sound that Arcade Fire should aspire to, rather than what they've been delivering more recently. But if we're going to make comparisons with these songs, we definitely have to mention Joy Division. There's a very strong Joy Division vibe running through several songs on Call the Comet. I especially hear it on The Tracers, Actor Attractor, and My Eternal. All three of those songs have a really strong bass and synth presence that reminds me of some of that band's music, and even early New Order in the aftermath of Ian Curtis's death. Maybe some of that rubbed off on Marr when he worked with Bernard Sumner in Electronic. But make no mistake, these are still very much Johnny Marr songs. The Tracers, in particular, feels almost anthemic at times, which should translate very well live. And speaking of early New Order, the track New Dominions absolutely sounds like a song that could have been on that band's Movement album. It's got this great pulsing synth rhythm with reverb-drenched guitars layered over the top and this growing mix of noise, droning, and distortion that builds and builds up to a cold finish. I don't know if it's one of my favorite tracks on the album, but it's certainly one of the most unique. But of course, many listeners will come into a Johnny Marr album hoping for music that harkens back to a different classic alternative band. While I wouldn't say his solo material sounds just like the Smiths necessarily, you will definitely hear echoes of his former band in several of the songs. On Day In, Day Out, for example, Marr's trademark jangly guitar should sound very familiar to longtime fans. And at one point in the song Hi Hello, the synths on the chorus practically shoplift the melody from the end of There Is a Light That Never Goes Out. A few tracks later, Walk Into the Sea opens with a haunting solo piano that recalls the Smiths' Last Night I Dreamt That Somebody Loved Me. And just as the piano on that classic Smiths track serves as a prelude to something much more grandiose, the same thing happens here. Walk Into the Sea soon evolves into something that I'd compare to a U2 deep album cut, the kind of song that's too epic for radio, but it's destined to become a fan favorite and a concert highlight. It's certainly an album highlight. You'll also hear a bit of U2 and perhaps some Simple Minds in the song Spiral Cities. Marr's guitar feels absolutely stadium size here, yet another album highlight. Now, while there's nothing I'd call low points on the album, there are a few tracks that don't feel like they quite measure up for one reason or another. Hey Angel, for example, is a rather pedestrian song in spite of the fact that it has some interesting guitar effects going on. Similarly, I mentioned Day In, Day Out earlier as having a strong Smiths vibe, but it's almost in a paint-by-numbers kind of way. When Marr's guitar solo kicks in, it feels cool at first, but then it doesn't actually go anywhere or build up in any dynamic way. And I gotta say that I'm on the fence with the song Bug. The track is a garage rock stomper with a kind of Duran Duran flair, if you can believe it. There's not a lot of substance to the song, and it really doesn't do a lot for me, but I have a feeling that a lot of listeners may call it one of their favorites. It's got a chorus that's designed to be an earworm, and the breakdown late in the song is sure to get fans singing along to the Na Na No More chorus. All in all, though, I think this is yet another strong solo effort from Johnny Marr. If I'm ranking his 3 albums so far, I think this new release would come in third, but that shouldn't be considered a slight. They're each quite good, and as I said earlier, it kind of makes you wish that he'd officially gone solo years ago. And while I may have felt like The Messenger and Playland were marginally better albums, I do appreciate hearing Marr's sound evolve a little on the new material. He's brought in more of a retro sound than we've heard from him in the past, but still crafted it into something fully new and contemporary. It's a winning formula, and one that I think will lead to this album growing on me even more in the weeks ahead. So I'm giving Call the Comet by Johnny Marr an X rating of 7 out of 10. Here's hoping that this guitar hero is finally on his way to being as well known as his more famous former bandmate. Once again, my name's Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Plus, be sure to check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.